Well, I'm trying a couple of different things with the setup tonight, so we know if everything looks okay. Here's sounds okay. Here's. Sorry about that. If everything looks, sounds, everything else okay. Uh, my stream health thing says that my bit rate's kind of low for some reason, so I hope it's not stuttery or uh, too laggy. Is that yes, it is stuttery and laggy? Because that's no good. Let me see what I can do to maybe boost that. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully it stays that way. If you see me staring off into space at all, it's because I've got the stream up on my third monitor this time to accommodate my different setups. So that's what that's all about. But tonight we're going to be taking a look at the Dune Imperium game from Direwolf Gaming, or Direwolf Digital, I guess they're called. Figured it would be timely with the release of Dune Part 2, which I actually haven't seen yet. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I haven't watched Dune Part 1 yet. But I have read the book, and I have watched the old Dune with Kyle MacLachlan and nice. Sounds good, Mel. I have seen the old Dune with Kyle MacLachlan and Patrick Stewart and Sting's Metal Underwear, so I feel confident knowing what I'm doing and knowing about the Dune backstory and Dune universe. So tonight we'll just do an introduction of what the game is, talk about some of the rules, go over the pieces and everything. Yeah, it's on my to-do list, but you know my to-do list. It's never ending, so I'll get to it eventually, probably. But yeah, we'll take a look at the game, the pieces, the setup, talk about some of the rules, and then Saturday we'll go ahead and do a full playthrough of it. A full playthrough, which according to the box is 60 to 120 minutes. So this game, yep, that's about right. This particular game is 1 to 4 players, 13 and up, but you know, it's Dune, which the book is relatively hard sci-fi, so the game is also relatively hard sci-fi. Of course, my bit rate health went to green, but now apparently my video's stuttery. Well, we'll see how it goes. But the book is also pretty hard sci-fi, and well, there's a lot of complicated thematically deep storytelling in the book, and political intrigue and backstabbing and all of that sort of thing, and the game is built around that same concept. So it's somewhat complicated, hopefully not too complicated, but we will take a look, and you'll hopefully notice I've got the second camera set up for details, so I'll be able to provide some detail to it, since this is mostly a deck builder. There's going to be a lot of cards, and it'll be nice to be able to do that zoomed in type thing. And if you hear the buzzing, it's because apparently we just got an amber alert in my area. I'm glad I turned the sirens off. But let's crack this thing open and see what's going on inside. So the instructions for this game also include several pieces of backstory in Dune Errata so that you can go through and learn about the world of Dune and how it kind of functions and the major players in it. But then the rules go into a very decently thick book that's 14 pages long and has not one, but 2 separate glossaries, with this having descriptions of different items, pieces, and icons throughout the game, and this one having descriptions of all of the different board spaces that you can land on as you move through the game. So what we're going to be doing is building a deck that moves the rest of the pieces that we have at our disposal as we go to essentially gain enough victory points to become the house that rules Dune, which is generally always what Dune's about. And then in addition to the main 15 pages of the instruction book, we also have a full 2-page description of the single and 2-player rules, because the game at its core in the main rule book is designed for 3 to 4 players. But the solo play and 2-player options actually have support in the Direwolf Digital Game Room app that you can download for your phone, or I think through Steam, that plays a lot of the single player version opponents for you, so you don't necessarily have to use the cards for those. But we'll talk about that some more in a little bit. Let's keep going through the pieces. So first off, we actually have a game board here. And because of my new setup, I actually have enough table space to display it. So here is your game board, representative of the planet Arrakis. So the board itself has several components to it. It's got factions on one side, so there are 4 factions that you'll be dealing with in the game, trying to maneuver with and make alliances and earn victory points, which is this set of markers on the side. 1st to 10 is the victory condition for this game, so that's what you're trying to build throughout the entire playthrough. So the 4 factions that we're going to deal with are the Emperor, the Spacing Guild, the Bene Gesserit, and the Fremen, which, if anybody out there has watched Dune, should all sound familiar too. So also on the game board we have combat power on this track down here. There are combat rounds where you engage against other players throughout the game. We have desert locations. So these 3 locations are out in the desert amongst the sandworms. This is where you're going to be getting your spice, and mostly where you're going to be facing some of the larger challenges. These purple spaces are outposts on Arrakis, so they will be points of conflict that you'll be entering into. And then up here we have the High Council, which is where you can actually get mentats from. Mentats can support your troops and your other units so that you can add to your combat power. And then we have the Choam. So I forget what the acronym stands for. It's something complicated though. So that's where you can actually go to sell any surplus spice that you have and make a different resource, because the game has several resources in it as well. Those being water, because Dune; Solari, which is essentially cash in the Dune universe; spice, which we all know that whoever controls the spice controls the universe; and then military power is kind of the other resource that you have, because you recruit your troops and you have them available for conflicts and taking resources away from your opponents. So there are 8 leaders in this game. There's going to be 2 from each of the great houses. House Ordo? Let's see. Do we have House Ordo? I honestly didn't look through to see who the great houses were. But we'll definitely check in a minute. Oh yeah, I was about to look that up and I forgot. But Chom, Combine, Honnet, Ober, Advancer, Mercantiles. How I was it pronouncing that? I have no idea. The only words in it that I'm certain of are Combine, Advancer, and Mercantiles. So those middle words, best guess. So what we've got for pieces are various resource markers, various icon markers that we use for the different sliding scales and what are these things called? Why am I blanking? You know what I mean. A track. That's what they're called. The different tracks in the game. But as you can see, there are a lot of pieces, and all of them do something different. And then as it's a deck builder, we have our deck of cards. So fairly hefty deck of cards. And like any good deck builder, you start with a 10 card starting deck that is the same as everybody else. And then you build your more expansive deck from a lineup of cards available to purchase as you play. So out of that, these are your starting cards. So everybody's going to get a 10 card hand out of that, up to 4 players. And this is what makes up the rest of your draw deck, what you're going to be able to buy as you play. So I'll set those aside for now. So when you're going through and doing the setup, you have several different kinds of cards as well. So these are the conflict cards, and these will determine the different types of battles you're going to compete in throughout the game. It's a randomized deck, so you can see there are 4 conflict level 3 cards, 10 conflict level 2 cards, of which you're only going to use 5 during any given playthrough, and 4 conflict level 1 cards, of which you're only going to use 1 in any given playthrough. So each time you play, you'll have a different arrangement of conflicts that you're going to have to work through. We have intrigue cards, which represent a couple different types of intrigue. So there's combat intrigue, and then there's basic intrigue. So basic intrigue can be played during the what are those things called? The agent and reveal turns. So you can play regular intrigue cards that'll affect gameplay during those turns. And then you can play combat intrigue to change up the way combat is going to flow and potential outcomes. Now, I don't know, let's take a look, Mel. Here are our leader cards. So for this particular game, we've got Leto Atreides and Paul Atreides, Muad'Dib from House Atreides. I think this one's just easier. We've got Vlad from Harkonnen and Glossu, also from Harkonnen. We've got Earl Memnon Thorvald and Countess Ariana Thorvald. Hi Wolfgang, welcome. Leto, is it? Okay. What if I want to imagine him as the Joker and call him Leto? Just kidding. I wouldn't want to offend anyone with that. And last but not least, Count Ilbin Reeches and Helena Reeches. So unfortunately, doesn't look like we've got any House Ordo in this game. Sorry about that, Mel. My pronunciations are terrible. Wait until you see the 1982 Japan video. That'll go a long ways toward validating that opinion, I promise. But then again, I'm not a resident of the Dune universe, so I think that I can be somewhat forgiven on that end. So of the markers in the game, there are plenty of them. Each of them serves various purposes. The orange being our spice, the silver being our Solari, the blue teardrops being our water, obviously, probably. Here is our Mentat. Mentats are the living computers of the Dune universe, so he lives up here with the Landsraad Council until you get him in play. We have victory point tokens for each of the potentially 4 players that will move along the victory point track. We have influence tokens, which go to each of the 4 factions and can be increased and decreased by various types of cards as you play through. 4 colors for 4 potentially different players. And then we've got our agent tokens. So each player can have up to 3 agents on the field. And so we've got 3 of each for the 4 different colors. Then also within the game, we have, like most deck builders, our most basic of cards that you can use to help flesh out your deck. In this instance, we have Fold Space as one of our basic cards. And we have The Spice Must Flow as our other basic card. And lastly, there is, for single player games, a set of House Hagel, Hagal, however Mel thinks I should pronounce it. Pick one of those. I have absolutely no idea. But we have a deck of those cards that serve as the opponent during a single player game. So when you're setting up, this entire 2-page spread of the instruction booklet is nothing but setup. So the first piece of the setup is putting in our faction tokens. Once you've created an alliance with a faction, you gain that token and the benefits of the faction, but it's only owned by whoever's got the highest place on that faction's track. So you can lose your alliance with them to another player if that player has cards that put them ahead of you on that faction's alliance track. So each of these are your faction markers for the 4 primary factions in the game. Acquiring them is also worth a victory point, which is what the little gold circle on them is. So you start with markers in each of your faction spaces. Whoops. Gave the Fremen to the Emperor. Okay, so there are your alliance markers. There's your Mentat. Next is that conflict deck that I was talking about. So for the conflict, you start with all 4 of your conflict level 3 cards. Shuffle those up. They go on the bottom. Then you take your conflict level 2 cards, shuffle those up, and you're going to randomly draw 5 to have your second part of the conflict deck. So get those shuffled up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lastly, you take your level 1 conflict cards, shuffle those, and place one of them on top of your conflict deck. So you have a 10-card conflict deck that you're going to be drawing from throughout the game. Once you finish that, which is step B here, you're going to place cards on the edge of the game board. Essentially, you want your draw deck here shuffled and laid out to build your, they don't call it a library, they call it something else. Yeah, whatever it is. These are going to form it, so I'll save the shuffling on those for the full playthrough on Saturday. But then you're also going to go through and create your starter decks out of your starter card options. Each starter card is denoted by this particular icon up in the corner. So, as is the case in most, here we'll try down here. There you go, that's better. As is the case in most deck builder games, you're going to start with a 10-card hand of those, and it's going to be standardized for all of the players in the game. And then you have your, I know I said 2 earlier, but you actually have 3 of your common cards. You're going to focus back again, camera? Sorry, got to trick it back into focusing. I don't know why it dropped out. Anyway, I know I said that there were 2 types of common cards, but there's actually a third, with the Arrakis Liaison being the 3rd card in that common pile. So each of those is going to be separated from the main deck and exist as a set of common cards. If any of you were here for the G.I. Joe deck builder, those are essentially equivalent to the green shirts that we had in that game. So then we're going to take our intrigue cards, and those will become a deck over to the side here also. It may come as no surprise, but the Bene Gesserit are your best source of intrigue cards because they're the sneakiest planners in all of Dune. So Once you've got that, you can either randomly choose or actively choose your leader card. The game is set up so that you can create what-if scenarios as well. So you can actually have two different players playing a leader from the same house. Or you can have one player play with two of the same leader, or not two of the same leader, two leaders from different houses in one kind of alliance, because I believe each player takes one card from the leader deck, and it really doesn't matter how they're aligned with each other. So there's 8 of them, and as I said, you can pick randomly or you can draw. There are difficulties to the different leaders. So some leaders have a single icon. So Paul has a single icon. Basically the secondaries from each house have a single icon. And that's the icon there next to their name. So single icon leaders are the quote-unquote easy mode, and the more icons they have, the more strategically difficult they are to play. So the other leaders, Lido and Helena, both have 2 icons, and then Harkonnen and the Countess both have 3 icons. So each one allows a larger variety of options when you're doing a playthrough. So you pick one of those, you get your 10 card starting deck, you set up your initial resource pile. So if you can see here in the instructions, you have a starting resource pile. See if I can get it on my detail camera here. Not very well. Okay, well, you've got a starting resource pile, and it's going to consist of your agents, some water, your victory tokens, various other things like that, and that's going to ebb and flow throughout the game. You start with a single water, and the rest of them just go in kind of your public draw pile. You start with your 3 agents, and you start with your various alliance tokens set up in the starting position under each alliance here. So these arrows, as you go up, are the 4 levels of the faction alliance that you can gain or lose as you play. And there are 4 starting spots for the different colors for each of the potentially 4 players in the game. So you set each of those up with a starting token for the different players at the base, and then you want to try to race to the top, because having an alliance is better for you than not. So out of your different agents, one of them is going to be your Swordmaster. Okay, and your Swordmaster is kind of your primary agent. Your combat marker, which are going to be these, denote your combat power, and these go in 0 on the starting on the combat track starting out, and those are going to increase and decrease based on not only your card play but the number of troops that you have in play as well. The other cubes that are in here, you notice there's more than 4 for each color. Those represent your troops that you can assign into your various garrisons here and deploy to conflict, which is the center zone, when you get to the conflict round of each, the conflict phase of each round. So those would be something that you put in your resource pile to start with. And then everything else, you just kind of sort by color and place into your various various resource buckets, as it were. So that's going to be your basic setup for the game. Conflict deck goes over here. Oops, don't throw your pieces on the floor. But that's going to be how you would set up a normal playthrough. And then if you're going to do the one-player playthrough, it has several differences in the setup that you're going to have to implement, including grabbing the house Hagel, Hagal, whatever, deck that's going to be your essentially opponent. As I said, there is also the free app from Direwolf, which you can get on desktop or phones. And in the free app, you have access to different supplementary game features. So for Dune, you have a virtual House Hagel deck that you can use for playing the game instead of having to use the physical cards. There are a couple of offshoots of the game and some expansions, and they're supported by the app as well. So if you don't want to physically use the cards, that's a nice option. And it also apparently speeds up the one-player experience. So we'll try that on Saturday when we do the single-player playthrough. So the entire backside of this is additional solo play rules and different solo play setup options. So you have a lot of reference material as you play this game. You have your main rules, you have your solo rules, and then because of the sheer volume of icons in the game, you also have your sheet of space descriptions. So this sheet's going to tell you what every different space on the game board does and how it implements and affects gameplay. So you don't necessarily have to learn the icons, which is good because I don't know how you could learn them all for a first time playthrough, but you can just reference this as you go. So then the way the game works is obviously by buying new cards and adding them to your deck. Now each card has various different aspects to it. The number in the corner is going to be the cost, so how much it costs to buy it and add it to your deck. The icons on the side are what are called agent icons, and they affect what you can do with an agent during the turn when you play this card. So with these icons, you can move agents to the various spaces on the board. There's also, down here at the bottom, on several of the cards, an agent action. So the agent action tells you what this specific card will do for you if you play it on the agent turn. Or the bottom piece here is called a reveal action, and that tells you what the card will do for you if you wait until the reveal part of the that phase of play. So in this case, the card would give you one spice and one of whatever the triangle is that I don't remember offhand. And then besides that, you also get the equivalent of Energy. Oh, that's right. That's what the triangle... Not a triangle, it's a diamond. I know my shapes. That's what the diamond is. It's an indicator of how much of this game's version of energy that card gives you that you can use toward buying other cards from the lineup. So each of the different factions will actually award bonuses as you play as well. The Bene Gesserit are good at awarding intrigue cards or helping you burn cards from your deck. So if you want to get rid of weaker cards or cards that don't help as much, so your deck is primarily focused on the more powerful ones, using the Bene Gesserit for that's a good option. The Fremen are obviously good for accumulating water and spice. So it's a deck builder, but it's also a pretty deep strategy game. Yeah, it's going to be interesting on Saturday to do the playthrough because I don't think I've ever really played a strategy game quite like this one. I've played plenty of card games. I guess we're just going to see how this one goes when we get there. But for anybody that's a Dune fan, there's a lot of Dune story built into this that you're going to be able to leverage. The only issue I have is, well, I prefer the cheesy David Lynch 80s Dune, and that's just not what we're getting here. Although, there's probably nothing wrong with that. Instead, we get the more genericized kind of, I guess, artist rendition option for Dune. So, if anybody's got any questions about different aspects of the game, I'm more than happy to answer them, and if I don't know them, look them up. Otherwise, that's about it for the initial setup and the components that the game's comprised of, and a brief overview of the rules. So, as I said, victory points, 1st to 10 is your goal. There's several different ways of gaining them. Alliances, increasing your faction reputation. There are various cards that award you victory points. Winning conflicts award you victory points. And then, in true Dune fashion, there are also several ways to lose those victory points. So it's a game of push and pull, and very much a game of shifting power. So that intrigue that the Dune stories are built around is well represented within this game. I'm curious to see how that plays out in a single player. It seems like that sort of thing with the human decision-making process would be more approachable for a multiplayer game, or at least deeper and more thoughtful. But that's one of the things that I'm interested in finding out. Hopefully most of you are interested in finding out as well, and join me on Saturday so we can do a playthrough for this. That's about all I've got for tonight. I have to go finish working on the 1982 Japan video for anyone who watches on YouTube, but we will re-adjourn Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time and see what happens in a playthrough. So thanks for being here, everyone, and hopefully I will see you then.